They plan to fire anybody who works a good government job who isn't willing to pledge allegiance. And if you think it doesn't matter to you, if you have a family member who works for the post office, that's a government job. If you have a family member...
It goes down that far. I'm thinking these are Pentagon jobs. And
when you start to change who's in charge, they change who's in charge and they change who works for them. They want to dismantle civil service. Democracy needs champions. And when one of the candidates says that he intends to be a dictator, believe him. Maya Angelou told us, if somebody tells you who they are, believe them.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Jamal Bryant podcast. Let's be clear. I cannot tell you how excited I am a stone's throw away from the most critical election of this generation. And I believe a singular, incredible, seminal voice for this hour is with us on today. I need you to do me a favor before I introduce her. I need you to call every person who said they weren't voting. I need to call everybody who says voting doesn't matter. I need to call everybody who's on the fence because I'm believing in these moments there's going to be a mind shift. Would you please welcome for me what I call personally the real governor of Georgia? Please welcome my Spelman sister, Miss Stacey Abrams.
Thank you so much.
I am so glad to have you here.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. I got to Atlanta, Georgia, December 8th, 2018, which was just a stone's throw away from your first run from being governor. I told everybody, had I been here already, she'd have got elected. I threw it all away. I blame myself.
Look, sometimes the math doesn't math.
Yes. I've talked about you behind your back and have an opportunity to talk to you in front of your face. I am a part of a legacy of civil rights leaders who are orators, but not necessarily organizers. And what I saw you do in Georgia completely blew me away. And I want you to know, we're both PKs. I'm not talking to you in Negro preacher talk, that I really mean it, because one of the defining things that I saw you do from 30,000 feet in the air is when people talk about the Black voter, they always think urban and never think rural. Mm-hmm. And there are a whole lot of areas that go untouched by mainline civil rights organizations and mainline Black denominations that don't think, hey, we got people that don't live in Atlanta. How did that happen for you when you weren't born out there?
So I was born in Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin. I just remember cold and cheese curds. Oh, but my family is from Mississippi.
Wow.
And so I grew up in Mississippi, and I grew up in the city. I grew up in Gulfport.
Yes.
But even our urban areas are smaller than a lot of other places. So right. I think Gulfport had maybe 50,000 people by the time I left. But my grandparents are from Hattiesburg, but my family is from the country.
Yeah.
And to your point, we often relegate our communities to a singular thing. We assume if you're Black, you live in Atlanta. And that's important. And we need to talk to our people here. But we also have to talk to us wherever we are, because we are in Rockdale.
Yeah.
We are in Walton.
Yes.
And we are in DeSoto. We are in Sumter. We're down in Eccles County. And part of the challenge is that you cannot ask someone to trust that you will serve them if they don't know that you can see them. And so part of our campaign strategy, part of my working strategy in politics has been go where the people are. As you said, I'm a double PK. My mother would always say, you meet people where they are, not where you want them to be.
Wow.
And that means going to those communities and showing up more than once. You can't drive through and say I was there.
Yes.
You've got to stop. You've got to park. You got to talk.
Now, I took ownership from the first election. You ran for governor again. Mm-hmm. And 2 months, 6 weeks maybe before the election, you and I were at an event co-sponsored by Tommy Dortch at a a person's home. And we had what I'm going to call gatekeepers from the city. And Mr. Dortch said, if we don't get these black men out, we throwing the vote away. All the data that I am seeing in this presidential election is screaming the exact same things. Tell me if black women have been the most consistent voting bloc for the Democratic Party since 2012, 2016. Tell me what we got to do to really galvanize our black men for the election.
So I want to level set a couple of things. Black men vote at high rates, just not as high as black women. It's true. Yes. Men vote less than women do across racial categories. So black men have been consistently high voters. There's always been a margin of difference, and that's usually because black men tend to be more conservative than black women.
Yeah.
And so it's usually been a 2 or 3 point gap. What we're seeing in this election is a wider margin that's driven by 2 areas. One is that we know that younger men, so younger black men under the age of 50, there are more of them who are willing to consider voting for the Republican candidate, in part because they've also been the targets of a consistent, not just outreach from that party, but they've also been the target of disinformation in a way that goes underreported. And this is not to suggest at all, because I know someone's listening thinking, well, you're saying they tricked us. No, I'm not saying that. Yeah. I'm saying there was an intentional strategy of disinformation that works.
Yes.
And what has caused me the deepest concern is that the media has ignored that. We will talk about Russian interference, but we have not talked about targeted disinformation at a community. And based on the information that has been provided, there is a natural follow through that you might make different choices. The responsibility of my political party, the responsibility of my ethnic and racial community is to make sure we're doing our part to push out good information, true information, honest information.
Yeah.
Because you can't counter disinformation with anger. You can only counter it with truth.
Yes.
And so we've got to meet people where they are. But I think the other piece, and this is why I'm such an admirer of yours, and I'm not just saying it because you have me on your show, but it's why we've worked.
Say it anyway.
But it's why we work. Why it's been so good to work with you. We've got to meet these moments of disinformation not with lecture, but with connection. We've got to talk to you. We've got to contact you. We've got to connect with you, and we've got to listen.
Yeah.
So in 2022, when I ran for governor, you were part of a strategy I had of outreach to black men, which generated a New York Times article saying I was struggling with black men. I had the same support that the other, that Senator Warnock had. But because I was a black woman making this outreach, it was seen as a moment of struggle. It was cast as, oh my God, she must be in trouble. No, for me, it was a moment of respect.
Yeah.
I respect the fact that black men have needs and values that have to be acknowledged and have questions that have to be answered the same as any other population. And so it's a very long way around. What I'm watching the Harris campaign do is that type of outreach. What I'm hearing come back is, well, she must be in trouble. No, she's being respectful.
Right, right.
Why would we ever expect any candidate to gain your vote if they're not willing to ask for your help? And when a black woman in particular makes that outreach, it should not be seen as a sign of desperation. It should be seen as a sign of respect and admiration.
Yes.
And that's definitely not what we're seeing from the other side.
I want to ask you, sitting on the porch as both a preacher's kid and as an advocate, help me to make sense of, this is the largest demographic this generation is of those who, one, don't go to church, and two, don't have confidence in democracy. What role does the church have to do? I read something the other day, I think in the Washington Post, that the black church is no longer the cultural influence that it once was in days gone by for the election for younger black people. What do you say or think that the black church needs to do to level that?
So we begin with where things started to fall apart. We have a generation that has access to more information instantaneously than any generation that's preceded it.
Yes.
We also have a generation that has faced more trauma, turmoil, and constant threat than previous generations, let's say post-Reconstruction, because you can never do a comparative to slavery. But in this moment, these are young people who not only know what's happening, they know what's happening for everyone else. They know where it's happening and they know who is doing it. And they were told that when we achieved the outcomes of the Voting Rights Act, of the Civil Rights Act, that things should be better. They have not seen in their recent experience the kind of seismic shifts that you and I understand.
Yes.
I remember what happened, but I also grew up with parents who were in the struggle and with grandparents. My grandfather, who I did not know, but my grandfather was born 25 years after the end of slavery. So my understanding of the connective tissue of history is different.
Yes.
But if you are a 22-year-old who has seen school shootings, natural disasters that are extreme and seem constant, you have seen the demise of democracy at the hands of a man who built his legacy on castigating and denigrating your community. You have seen, for the first generation since Reconstruction, your civil rights actually be stolen if you're a woman.
Yes.
There's a reason for doubt. And so into that space where the Black church can enter is to not chastise you for not being there, but give you a reason to come back. Become the center of community again by showing up to serve the problems that people see. And where you and I have such, I think, alignment is that there are too many churches who believe their job is to talk about, not be about. Meaning, I can't get involved in politics. This is not about being partisan. Churches are precluded from partisanship.
Right.
They are not precluded from politics because you and I both know there is nothing more political than the church.
Listen, I'll be a witness. Yes.
And therefore, we have to be engaged in meeting people where they are, meeting their needs, talking about why school shootings matter, not just on Sundays, but the church being the locus for the action that demands that we have gun safety laws in this state, that we can't just talk about the lack of access to health care. Churches have to be at the front lines every single day, demanding that Georgia and the other 8 states expand Medicaid and give access to health care. We can't just talk about the expensive nature of housing if we're not also then lobbying to make certain that those who are in charge are providing solutions. The church has to be what it was when it was the center of culture, it was also the center of solutions.
That's right.
And that's the space I think that's not being fully occupied.
It is with that heart that you felt compelled to start doing children's books. Says, let me not wait until they get to Elon and Spelman. Let me go a little bit lower. My dad, as a pastor, used to say, if you old enough to pick out your clothes, you old enough to make a decision about God.
Yes.
Tell me what made you move into that lane to become a children's author. I mean, of all the things.
So I've been very privileged to be a writer, a published author for about 20 years. I published my first novel right after law school. And I've been, I've written romantic suspense. I've written legal thrillers. I've written nonfiction. But children's books for me are one of the most amazing ways to communicate. And the most recent book, it's called Stacey Speaks Up.
Yes.
It's the third in the series of Little Stacey. It's called Stacey Stories. And this one is about how do we talk to children about how we marry empathy and advocacy. It's something I know that's very close to your heart.
Yes.
We've got to be able to feel each other's pain. But we also then have to be willing to do something about it.
Yeah.
And so little Stacey is in the lunch line and she sees a friend, actually not a friend, just a kid that she doesn't know, a friend in front of her who's told to put his tray back. And she knows that means he's not going to eat on the best day of the week.
Right.
And she doesn't know what to do. And, even adults, we're paralyzed sometimes by how overwhelming this moment can feel. And I wanted to tell a story that children can access, but parents can read to them and possibly pick up, where our empathy says something needs to be fixed. Our advocacy says we need to be the one to do it. And so it's about how she helps organize her friends and how they start to grapple with those issues.
No, that's great. I think it's so important. The impact that you have made is, I think, even beyond your realm of understanding. When I went to Morehouse in '89, I went singularly because Dr. King went there. I had never seen the school. I'm dating myself. There were no Morehouse websites at the time.
There were no websites.
There was no website whatsoever. I only applied because of Dr. King. My daughter's a freshman at Spelman, and her mom went to Hampton. Her twin sister was going to Hampton. She was going to Hampton. The last minute, she said she wanted to go to Spelman.
Yeah.
She said, why? She said, Stacey Abrams went there.
Oh, my gosh.
It was a true story.
Oh.
It stopped me in my tracks. I thought you were coming to be close to me. I thought you were going to say it's because your father's sister school. But no, that is the level of impact. And I wanted you to know that the generation sees you and honors you. I was in the Midwest during the uprising around George Floyd. I was able humbly to participate in his funeral, both in Houston and in Minneapolis. And in the rise of that, Stacey, so many corporations pledged allegiance and said, we want to be a part. Prior to my pastoring life, I was National Youth Director at NAACP. We were struggling, trying to get checks from whomever just to stay afloat. Wherever y'all are watching, please support your local Freedom Fund banquet,
Yes.
wherever that is. And there was just an infusion of corporate sponsorships into civil rights organizations. Then we rolled over one morning and they stopped the funding and said diversity, equity, and inclusion is no longer necessary. It's an even playing field. I know that that's not true.
Yeah.
And clearly you know that that's not true. And you're doing a lot of heavy lifting in that area. I want you to speak to where DEI is in an era of banning books.
So diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. We treat it as though it's this new phenomenon, something that became manifest in the 21st century. It's actually been around since this country was created.
Wow.
Because when you think about and you carbon date it, Reconstruction, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, those were DEI laws. The 19th Amendment, giving women suffrage, white women to start, and then with the addition of the Voting Rights Act, Black women, that's DEI. Title I, fully funding public education for poor children. That was a DEI law because it was insufficient to say that you had education if we did not include those who were poor and had equity in terms of distribution. And so I would say that if you are, a U.S. Senator from the Appalachian region who was able to graduate from public schools, you are a product of DEI.
Yes.
Because it was DEI that made it possible for you to get that education that you could have gotten if you'd lived in a wealthier part of the country. The Americans with Disabilities Act is a DEI law. It took until 1990. So when we hear about attacks on DEI, they try to frame our attention around race alone. But if you are a veteran of any foreign war who lives in this country, you have benefited from DEI. You've also been, unfortunately, sometimes distanced from it because you didn't get access to the GI Bill.
Right.
But all of our interest should be in the foundational values of diversity. That means all people. Equity, that means having fair shot at opportunity. And inclusion means having access to the American dream however you want to create it. The attacks on DEI are not because DEI doesn't work. It's because it worked too well. It's because the Voting Rights Act changed the nature of who got elected. And now Kamala Harris can stand for president and we have a competitive election. And that's because DEI works.
Wow.
We have companies that are making money because people of color have the bandwidth and the funding to buy their products. But we also see a difference in how this nation works because DEI works. And therefore, the people who are attacking it, the people who are quietly quitting it, the moral cowardice of the companies like Ford that are walking away from it, they are doing so not because DEI works, but because they don't like the fact that those who depended on DEI's failures are now facing the consequences of its success. And so I've created a series of organizations. They're known as the APR Network. So I encourage people to go to aprnetwork.org, sign up. We can give you talking points on why DEI works.
Need them. Every preacher, go get them.
Please.
Go get them.
We can give you, we've got this amazing ad campaign because we know that those who want to destroy DEI they have a pretty simple system.
Yeah.
It's you demonize the language, make us pretend we don't like DEI, try to make us change our name.
Yeah.
You litigate, you sue Fearless Fund, you sue CBS for hiring writers, you sue to dismantle the Americans with Disabilities Act, and then you legislate. You pass laws like in Georgia and in Florida and in Texas where you say we can't tell the truth. You can ban books because they tell the history of our country. You do the work of convincing us that what we know to be true isn't true. But we can fight against that infernal triangle with what I like to call our virtuous cycle. We need to legitimize our language, inoculate ourselves against attack, litigate and legislate ourselves. We can win, but we've got to know we're in a fight.
I love it. I think a lot of people know your personality, but don't know your profile. Being an attorney, you were just an attorney
yes.
of the highest order. I want you to talk about two things
yes,
because when we vote for the president, a lot of people don't understand the Supreme Court is at stake.
Yes.
And there's a whole lot on the line with the Supreme Court. In this coming presidential election in just a few weeks, the reason why we have to vote for the presidency, how does that impact the Supreme Court and the changing Supreme Court that's probably going to take place in the next 4 years?
So we need to understand that the three branches of government, we learned it in school, but the presidency determines who sits in the Supreme Court when you have the ability to make those appointments. What we saw happen to President Obama when Mitch McConnell was the Senate Majority Leader was that he forestalled the president from being able to make those appointments. That meant that when Trump became president, he had access to 3 seats. That is why women do not control their bodies. And irrespective of your belief about abortion, our belief about a woman's right to control her body, our belief about women's health care, Amber Thurman died because of an abortion ban that said that doctors had to question if they could treat her. She did nothing wrong. She did nothing illegal.
Wow.
That's the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
The fact that we can't get guns out of our schools is the Supreme Court. And so if we want better for our children, better for our families, we've got to use the system we have. We can change the system maybe one day, but we can't wait for the system to change before we engage.
That's true.
When people say they're not into politics, I'm like, politics is into you, and it is a stalker.
Yeah.
And the U.S. Supreme Court, if you look at the ages of who's currently on that court,
yes,
what happens next, the fact that we don't have a full effective Voting Rights Act anymore, the reason voter suppression happens at such a pace is because the Supreme Court struck down Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. So if we want more, if we want what we had, and let alone more, we have to get control. And that begins with voting for the President of the United States. But I'm going to put in a plug, vote all the way down the ballot.
That's right, yes.
Because the same DA that refused to prosecute Ahmaud Arbery's killers lost her job because we decided to vote. The judges making decisions about our communities, no matter where you live, those judges are often elected vote. The city council, the county commission, your state legislators who control billions of dollars, vote. We aren't guaranteed victory, but we are guaranteed access. And access is how you get to victory.
No, that's great. I want you to talk about this, what a lot of people think is Fantasy Island and don't really believe it exists, but it's a 900-page document.
Project 2020.
Yes. I need you to give us the cheat code.
Okay.
Break it down for us. What is at stake and what's on the line?
So the Heritage Foundation has been around for more than 40 years. And actually, they've been producing a version of this, which folks have long ignored until we saw it play out. In this document, what they call Project 2025, when they started it, it was called the Mandate on Leadership. It came out after Reagan.
Wow.
That's when they first started publishing it. They have said what we want to do. We want to strip communities of color of access. They talked about affirmative action and how do you end it. We want to do election security. That's voter suppression. They've been telling us what they were doing, but more importantly, they've been doing it. So when we say Project 2025 is dangerous, it's because we've seen Project 2020, Project 20. They've been able to implement it. And so here's what they want to do now. They are angry about what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have achieved. They're angry about what Barack Obama achieved. They do not want us to have what we have. And so it's 900 pages of how they plan to fire anybody who works a good government job who isn't willing to pledge allegiance. And if you think it doesn't matter to you, if you have a family member who works for the post office,
wow,
that's a government job. If you have a family member,
it goes down that far. I'm thinking these are Pentagon jobs. And
when you start to change who's in charge,
yes,
they change who's in charge and they change who works for them. They want to dismantle civil service. That's how this happens. And the reality is what they're willing to tell us they're going to do is not the end of what they're going to do. And so the reason I invoke the post office receives funding from the federal government.
Right.
Louis DeJoy is a federal employee, but there are so many others. We just have to recognize that the minute you break the dam and you say you can start to interfere in the employment of government workers who are not political appointees, that reaches everyone. When you say that DEI is going to be pulled out of every part, that means that the Small Business Administration, which has a responsibility to make sure that capital gets to Black and brown small businesses, to women-owned businesses, that's going to end. They've already sued to close down the Minority Business Development Agency, which has helped create millions of small businesses.
Yeah.
All of those things will be not just under attack, they will be dismantled. And it doesn't take much because look at how far we slipped back in 8 years. They've written down, they've told us what they're going to do. Yeah. It's for those who love sports, it's like they gave you their playbook. They've told you what they're going to do. And we are a peewee football team about to play against, I grew up watching the Cowboys and the Jets and those, but it's like you're playing against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
And you're a peewee football team. If we think that what they say they're going to do isn't going to happen because, we're playing the same game, no, we're not in the same game.
No.
And so our job is to recognize that we too have the ability to play pro ball. We too have the ability to fight back. But it begins by making sure they don't get the power they seek, because what they seek is to strip us of our power.
One of the things that white evangelical Christians did was they said, you know what? Let's try to control the school boards.
Yes.
Because if we control the school boards, then we can inform the curriculum and we can dismantle little Stacey in the cafeteria before she gets there. I want you to talk about, because you mentioned it in passing, going to the bottom of the ticket. This is the very first time, Ms. Abrams, since 1976. This is 2024. Since 1976, this is the first time that the majority of the Atlanta school board is not Black. So what do we do? Because I pastored in Atlanta, Georgia, Stonecrest, Georgia. Any number of people come through our church who running for office. Nobody has come through who's running for the school board. What do we do is a two-part question. One, on preparing people to run. And number two, how do we really mobilize people for the non-sexy positions? So it's easy for the governor, for the president, for the senator, for the congressman, but you're going down to commissioner and city council. There's no TV ads for that. How do we get the community engaged for those?
So I'm going to start with the second part of your question to get to the first. Most of our lives are not governed by who the president is or who's in Congress. If your children get the education they need, that's your school board. If your trash gets picked up, that's your city council or your county commission.
Right.
If there are gun laws that protect our children, that's the state legislature. The governor of Georgia refused to accept EBT money for the summer. He said he would not feed children during the summer.
Ooh.
It was money. It's money we've already paid into the system.
Yeah.
He sent it back. Every year, the state of Georgia sends back millions of dollars that we have paid for health care, and we don't get to have it. And we say, oh, well, it's just poor people. No. Veterans in Georgia don't get health care because we won't expand Medicaid, because they were in the National Guard and they don't qualify for TRICARE and they can't have access. So those are not decisions made by Congress. Congress made this decision. It said, here's money.
Right.
The president made the decision. Here's money. But when your city council won't accept the money because they've got to match it, when your county commission won't deploy the money to your part of town, those are decisions made by local elected officials. When your child sits in a classroom with books that have been banned because Toni Morrison dared to tell the truth about the history of slavery, that's a problem. That's a city council decision. Now, we might live in communities where we think we are immune to the terrible stories we hear, but we're not immune. These things don't happen overnight. They happen gradually. It's the boiling the frog.
Yeah.
And we're sitting in the water.
Welcome to the jacuzzi.
And so if we aren't paying attention, if we are so fixated on the big jobs, and we need to pay attention, I vote for president, but recognize that if you want the president you vote for to get the help she needs, then you've got to make sure she's got a Congress that she needs and a state legislature that actually implements it, that we've got governors who believe in the people. If you are a small business owner who wants to have access to capital, you do not want a state legislature that doesn't believe that they should pay attention to the demographic composition of the state. And 190% of the money goes to the population that only makes up 50% of the state. So we've got to calibrate our expectations with our interest. The second part then is that we've got to be the ones running. Running for office simply means that you believe your voice matters enough that you're willing to speak for the people who don't necessarily know theirs do.
Yes.
Standing for public office does not guarantee you win. God knows I know that.
Yeah.
But sometimes standing for public office means that you're telling people you care, and it becomes an educational opportunity. Because sometimes we just need people to know what they're entitled to. I don't believe most people experience voter apathy. It's not that they don't care. They experience voter despair. They don't know that there is something better because they've never seen it happen.
Yeah.
When we stand for public office and when we get in and do that public office, that's when things start to change. But we can't think that voting is magic. You vote and things get done. No, voting is medicine. You and I both experienced family members who have had grave illnesses. If you stop taking your medicine, whatever you've got is coming back and it is bringing friends. So we take the medicine. Sometimes it is bitter. Sometimes it tastes worse and it creates more pain than whatever ailment you have.
Right.
But if we don't take the medicine, we know what we're going to get. If we do take the medicine, we start to treat those ills. We start to treat the societal ills that we know we are affected by, and we get stronger. If you look at the communities that get everything they want, it's because they never stop showing up. We've got to start showing up, and that means standing for office. That means supporting people running for office. That means recognizing that $5 can either pay for Starbucks or pay for a leaflet to get somebody to turn out.
Yes.
So forego your cup so that your cup can overflow.
If you were 2 weeks out from the election, if you were the chairperson for Black America's Get Out the Vote,
yes.
what are the two things you would do with only 2 weeks left on the clock?
Now, you and I both come from the church, so I got to do a trinity.
Yo, do 3 points. I'm gonna close it.
Okay. One, verify that you are on the rolls, because no matter where you are, voter suppression still exists. Make sure you are on the rolls, and then verify that you have a plan to vote. So verify. Don't just say, I'm going to vote. Know which day, know what time, know how you plan to get there. The best laid plans fall apart because we don't verify that we have a plan. So verify. Second, volunteer. We've got to go to those places that no one shows up in, because those are the voters that we need. The ones who already know they're going to do it, Great. Now find somebody who needs you. Sign up. Volunteer to go and canvass. 2 weeks out is enough time to get the people we need to show up. And it can't be the people we like. It's got to be the people we don't like to talk to.
Right.
It's the place where we don't want to stop at that stoplight because we don't know what's going to happen. But we got to voluntarily go there. So we've got to verify, we've got to volunteer. And then by all that matters, we have to vote up and down the ballot because the devil is in the details.
Yes.
Vote. Even if you don't have to, I'll say this and I'll stop. We seem to think we have to like who we vote for.
Woo.
I don't need to like you.
Yes.
I need to like what you can do for me.
Yes.
I don't need to be able to go and hang out with you. I need to know that I can hang my hope on you and that you're going to do the job.
Yeah.
And so we have to vote like our lives depend on it because as you said at the beginning, this isn't just a consequential election. This is a defining election. Democracy needs champions. And when one of the candidates says that he intends to be a dictator, believe him. Maya Angelou told us, if somebody tells you who they are, believe them.
Every time.
But then we've got to go all the way down the ballot because if you want to know who's going to run for president one day, it depends on who you're electing for other jobs today.
Yes.
So go all the way down the ballot. So verify, volunteer, and vote. And that's how we get to victory.
I love it. Reverend Sharpton said recently, he said, don't vote for either candidate, vote for yourself.
Exactly.
And whoever is best for you and for your community and for your family, that's who you have to vote for. This is a maturing for our community that we are not voting for personalities. We're voting for policy.
And power.
And power. Wow.
We are voting for power.
Yes. We got to have it.
Yeah.
On steroids.
Yes.
I'm appreciative that you have hung out with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm grateful for who you are, for modeling for us that sometimes your strength is when you're not the king, you're the kingmaker. And your crown is fitly placed for what you have done in American history. They will not be able to ban it. That you rewrote this state's politics, and right after Jimmy Carter, it's got to be Stacey Abrams, who has really been a pioneer for democracy in this state and for the country. And let me go a step further, that your leadership is so novel because it is not for Black America, it's for America.
Thank you.
And I'm just appreciative. So if you got kids, go get the kids' book. If you're an adult, go to the website. If you're in high school, go to Spelman or Elon. If you're not sure, go verify all of your status. But I am so grateful that this was not just inspiration, but it was information, and we're the better. I want to challenge every single one of you to do what every preacher tells you not to do, and that's to spread a rumor. Tell everybody Stacey Abrams was on the Jamal Bryant Let's Be Clear podcast, and make sure you watch it twice before you cast your vote. Thank you.
Thank you.